Welcome back to another of our parenting lecture series. We're up to part 7, and thank you anyone listening, watching on Torah Anytime or on my website, heartofparenting.com. Today we'd like to focus on a specific area of parenting, and that is giving over Yiddishkeit, giving over Torah and mitzvos to our children. The primary way to give over Torah and mitzvahs to our children is by example. How we live our lives, who we are, what is important to us, that is the most important area. That is the main way of chinuch, of giving over to our children. It's not what we say, it's not what we preach, it's who we are. Parenthetically, a piece of advice: it's not worthwhile, pretty much almost never. It's not worthwhile to give a shmooze, to give a musar shmooze to your child about any given topic. You may be a famous Baal Musar, you may be maybe a big Rosh Yeshiva, a Rav. It doesn't work with our children to give them a shmooze, explaining the chashivos of tefillah. Maybe if I read them this part of a book, part of a sefer, it's going to inspire them. It doesn't usually work. Just usually ends up causing friction and causing hard feelings. It's not usually the way to go. The children's rebbeim, the children's moros, they have a chance at giving such a shmooze. We really don't have such a good shot in that approach, in that way. Our shmooze to our children is what we're doing, what's important to us. A mother who's careful to daven, and she davens with kavana, the children notice how their father davens in shul, how their father spends time learning. If we are acting the way we should, there's really no need for any speeches, because how we behave is the greatest speech. And if we're not acting the way we should, we're not behaving the way we should, so then any speech is just pointless because it's contradicted by our own behavior. Sometimes you see parents that push their children, fathers that push their children to learn, you could do it, and they themselves are not using all their time learning. Look, it's easier to put it on your child. Let him do it. Give him the work, and you yourself don't do it. Maybe you have excuses why, but it's not going to be effective if a parent is not living it themselves and pushing their child. It's not going to work. So the greatest chinuch is working on ourselves, growing ourselves. If we're growing, we're living properly. That's the greatest and maybe really only shmooze we can give our children. Showing our children who we respect, how we speak about Rabbanim, how we speak about Talmidei Chachamim, how we speak about Torah. That's what's going to have an impact. Really nothing else. I want to share with you a very important idea about Yiddishkeit in general, which is very close to my heart, and I think has particular relevance in parenting and giving over Yiddishkeit. Unfortunately, many people think that Torah and mitzvos is a burden, is a yoke. And even if they don't look at it as a burden, they look at it in the following lens. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us olam haba. Hashem wants to reward us, which is true. And that's why we have to sacrifice. In this world, we have to give up from our pleasures and give up all our happiness, enjoyment, fun. We have to give it up, and Hashem will pay us. Hashem will reward us in the next world. And chas v'shalom, if we don't act the way we should, Hashem will punish us. But the idea is that Torah and mitzvahs is not really for our benefit in this world. It's for our benefit in the next world. And that is 100% not true. In my opinion, borders alpikarsis. Darchel darchei nayam, as Alter Navardik brings out this pasuk, Darchel darchei nayam, v'chol nesivosel shalom. The ways of the Torah are sweet, are peaceful. Hashem loves us. And Hashem did not only give us the Torah and mitzvahs to reward us in the next world, but He gave us a happier existence in this world. It's the diet that's the healthiest for the person. The example I like to use is smoking. Everyone knows it's harmful to smoke. Nobody would say, I'm not going to smoke. I'm going to give up from my happiness in this world. I'm going to sacrifice this world, not to smoke. Everyone understands that once a person's addicted, it's hard to stop. But everyone understands stopping to smoke is good for you. It's best for you. It's not a sacrifice. And the same thing is with Torah and mitzvos. Even though it's true, it's not always easy. And there are desires and the temptations, and sometimes there are things that feel like a sacrifice. But in the larger scheme of things, it's not really a sacrifice. It's really for our best. And Torah and mitzvahs is a better, happier life. In this world, we have to know it, we have to believe it, and we have to feel it. If that's the way we approach Yiddishkeit, then our children are going to want to emulate. They're also going to be Shomrei Torah mitzvos. You see many times parents that are doctors, coincidentally, their children become doctors. If it's because the father is constantly pushing the child, become a doctor, it doesn't work. Probably the opposite. But if the father loves being a doctor and the child respects his father, appreciates his father, he's like, wow, I also want to be a doctor. If they see the good in it. If we live our lives properly, Torah mitzvahs, that we enjoy and we appreciate the fact that we're zocheh to the Torah, then our children are going to want to keep the Torah. If not, if it's a burden, then chas v'shalom, we put our children in danger. Rabbi Mosha Feinstein famously remarked that the reason why lo alei chas v'shalom, unfortunately, so many children in the 1900s in America did not keep Torah and mitzvahs, even though their fathers, their parents, were moser nefesh, sacrificed to keep Shabbos, to be from, is because the father would say, shver zu sein a Yid. It's difficult to be a Jew. So the father got fired, and we're not judging any of these people, but they said, shver zu sein a Yid. It's hard, it's difficult to be a Jew. So the way most people think that Rabbi Mosha was saying, is Rabbi Mosha was saying, don't complain, don't say, shver zu sein a Yid. Be grateful you're Jewish. Be grateful you have the Torah. It's worth losing money. It's worth sacrificing to have the Torah, to have Olam Haba. But if you look at Rabbi Mosha and Darash Moshe Parshas Vayetze, that's absolutely not what he says. Rabbi Moshe writes that it's not true that the person's losing money. As Chazal tell us, a person does not lose money from keeping Shabbos. It's not true, shver zu sein a Yid, in any sense of the word, that it's difficult to be a Jew. The parnasa, the income, is from Hashem. And whatever money a person's supposed to have, he'll have. He's not losing a penny. If a parent raised his child like that, even though he's being fired from his job, but the father says, okay, this income is not supposed to be, and he has bitachon and trust in Hashem, then the child's going to grow up with a love for Shabbos and not feel a resentment towards whatever happened to his father with losing his job. There's actually a beautiful story I heard over that one time a father starts taking out a bunch of pink pieces of paper, Sukkah's time, and he starts hanging up all these pink pieces of paper around the Sukkah. What were these pink papers? They were pink slips from all the times he was fired for keeping Shabbos, for not working on Shabbos. And he said, this is my Sukkah's decoration. This is a great pride to be a Shomer Torah and mitzvos. This is the way we have to live our lives. And instead of working so much on our children, that they should learn, that they should daven, instead of expending all our effort, that our children should grow. It's a better investment. and the right thing, that we should grow. We should grow ourselves. We grow ourselves, it will spill over, no doubt, in the best and healthiest way for our children. One of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Kalish, Rav in Lawrence, Rabbi Kalish, my Rebbe in Yeshiva Farakwe, Rabbi Kalish would say, the reason why my children, Baruch Hashem, are learning is because I never gave up on my own learning. I wasn't busy making sure they learned. I was busy myself, always trying to learn, trying to know more, trying to learn more and more Torah. The best thing for my children was I was busy myself learning, not watching them and being on top of them. Forcing when it comes to Yiddishkeit really does not work. I like to say a mashal. Imagine you have an aunt, I call her Aunt Esther. You have an aunt and you want your children to have a relationship with her and you always hack them. You have to say hello to Aunt Esther, you have to talk to her, you have to call her on the phone, you have to like her, you have to do this, you have to do that. Even if Aunt Esther has a lot going for her, the fact that it's constantly shoved down the child's throat is not going to cause a love for Aunt Esther. The opposite. Yiddishkeit is not about keeping the laws. It's a relationship, a connection to Hashem, a connection to His mitzvahs, to His commandments. It cannot be forced. And forcing usually has an opposite effect. So we don't recommend forcing. I don't recommend forcing a child to daven, forcing a child to go to shul. In a general sense, I don't recommend it. Privately, a person can ask their trusted mechanech, but general sense, forcing is not a good approach, because even if you force them to do it, but okay, they did it because you made them do it, but that's not going to develop a connection over the long run to Torah and mitzvahs. Of course, we encourage, we can offer incentives, but forcing usually has an opposite effect. I will say that there is one time, and we have to save our chips, save when we're going to be tough, and that is when it comes to negatives, things that are dangerous for our children. Those are places that we could be more forceful. Don't let your child, on normal circumstances, don't let your child have devices where they could access inappropriate material. Don't let your child hang out in places that will be harmful for them. That's when you could be very strict. And let me explain why. Because when you're stopping your child from doing something wrong, you're not looking to build a relationship with Yiddishkeit for the child. You just need to protect the child. For protection, you could be strict and you could keep them away. But to build good, to build a connection to Yiddishkeit, to do mitzvahs, forcing for that is not worth all that much. And the way, try to picture it in raising our children, is we want to build a fence around our house, around our property. And we have to build a strong fence as much as possible. I can't go into details, and every situation is different. But as much as possible, we want to build a safe place for our child to grow. So we have the borders, we protect our children from outside influence as much as possible. And around that wall, around that, in that safe place, then we need to build. Some parents, they spend their whole time focused, don't do this, don't do that, do this, don't that. Everything's about building the wall. You build around a wall around the property, but you don't build anything inside the property. It's worthless. Yes, we need to put up some strong walls, and there we could be a little bit tougher and stricter. There are times we have to give in. I can't go into details in a video share. However, when it comes to building, you want our children to daven, to learn, to have a connection to Yiddishkeit. Building, that's not going to come with forcing. That's going to come by cultivating a relationship. So that's the dichotomy of things that we're trying to protect our children from, and then giving our children the heart of Yiddishkeit, connecting them to Yiddishkeit. That's going to come with positiveness. That's going to come not by forcing. That's going to come by example. Sometimes when it comes to protection, we have to be strict, we have to be tough, but that's because over there we're not looking to build anything. We're just looking simply for protection. Why is it that we fall into a trap many times of forcing our child to daven, to learn, when maybe deep down, if we think about it, we realize it's fruitless, it's not a good idea. So there are two ideas. One idea is for our own nerves. Parents often tell me, I can't see my child sleep through davening. It gets me very nervous, it gets me very upset. We have to use our minds, our logic, over our emotions. What does that mean? You're getting nervous, and therefore you feel much better if you pester your child, yell at your child, get him out to shul. Phew, feel so much better. He went to shul. What does that mean? You should still be worried if you want to be worried. Anxiety is not a good thing. We need to work on it. But you want to be worried, you still be worried. So big deal, you threw your kid out of the house, he went to shul. What do you think he's doing in shul? Baruch atah Hashem, I love you Hashem. He's obviously not so connected to davening just yet. It takes time. So it shouldn't make you feel that much better. It's really imagination. We have to use our mind, our intellect, and realize if it's not healthy for our child to force him, then stay calm. It's so important, like we spoke about last week. Stay positive. Okay, right now my child's not so into davening, but Baruch Hashem, as trying to keep him safe. Hopefully he's not into bad things. Again, we have some walls that we're able to keep as much as possible. And over time, he's going to connect. You can't force that connection. You have to have patience. That connection cannot come by force. It has to come from within the child. And the second reason why we may fall into a trap of forcing our children is, what are our neighbors going to think? What are our neighbors going to think when I come to shul and my son is not with me, etc.? My son's not at the learning program, and that, again, like we spoke about way back in the beginning, we have to be focused on what's best for our children. It's not about us. It's not about our image. It's about what's best for our child. That is what we have to focus on. And of course, if we focus on what's best for our child, in the long run, we will have the most nachas be'ezus Hashem. In the long run, we'll have the most to be proud of. We can't worry about what the neighbors think. We have to think about what Hashem wants. What's the right thing to do? Act for Hashem. That's what we have to be focused on. Let us be zocha to inspire ourselves to our connection to Yiddishkeit. Have a love for Torah mitzvahs that permeates our home, that spills over to our children. And be'ezus Hashem, they should follow our ways. We should have so much nachas. Thank you for listening.